Sweet. So obviously, Louis, thanks for joining me and taking time out of the day to speak to me. I'll go straight into it and just ask you to just explain a bit who Just Stop Oil are and what you guys kind of stand for.
Yeah, so Just Stop Oil, we're a civil resistance group. So we use non-violent direct action to stand up to the government. We're asking for no new fossil fuel licensing. Currently, the government's trying to push through 42 new oil and gas fields in the North Sea. And basically, that's the implications for climate change. It could actually kill the future of our whole generation. So we're not going to let them do it. So we have a few tactics. One is we're trying to get basically cultural actions. So to get more of the general public hearing about us, we'll do stuff like we disrupted the football and the BAFTAs, and we're going to do a few more things like that. And we're also going for material disruption. So like oil terminals, we did a couple weeks where we blockaded all of the biggest oil terminals in the country. We cost these companies about £4 billion over 2 weeks. You know, tanker surfing, blocking roads, tunneling under roads so they can't be used, occupying the pipeworks in these facilities. We've done a lot of these in Essex, a lot in London, some in the Midlands, and one in Scotland so far.
So obviously you said you touched on like football. Obviously you were very got quite famous, I'd say, for your when you tied yourself on the goalpost. What kind of makes you like decide to do it at football pitch? Is it the numbers, or is it more to do with the tribal instinct of football fans that maybe you thought you'd get more people on your side?
To be honest, no, we thought the tribal instinct of football fans would work against us. It was purely because it's a culture of people who we haven't really reached out to before, and there's a lot of people in one place and it's so widely viewed. We saw it as an opportunity to let these people know that their government are lying to them, their government are betraying them. A lot of these people, they only hear about the news through mainstream media, and a lot of that's lies. 3/4 of the UK media is owned by 4 billionaires. That tells you enough to know that you're not getting the truth if you're going through normal news sources. And the majority of football fans are. And so I think they have a right to know that their government's betraying them, stabbing them in the back. The best way we had of demonstrating that is to take an action that they will see. And so, yeah, I locked my neck to a football post, scariest thing I've ever done. And there were 40,000 people in that stands. Generally, as far as sports go, that's pretty good in terms of how many people will see you doing something. I can't tell you how many times we've done a march or a banner drop and like maybe a dozen or 50 people have seen it, and that's felt like cool at the time. But 40,000 in one place, it's amazing. And then, of course, we were hoping it would go viral, go all over the internet, and a lot more people would see it. And it seemed to work, and we knew the vast majority of people, even who saw it, wouldn't connect with why we're doing it or even care really. And that's okay. From the start, we thought maybe if 1% of the people saw that and clicked the link on my t-shirt or went to the website, that would be plenty, and we'd be happy with that.
So do you think football fans are they need to, as a whole, needs to see, and everyone in total really needs to see the bigger picture? And do you think a lot of people are kind of head in the sand and not really looking at what's going on?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, I think basically these people deserve a better future. They've been lied to their whole lives by the governments, and the reason that they don't see it is because it's been so constant their whole lives, and nobody can be blamed for that. That's just how it is. And I think when the football community as a whole does start to realize the predicament we're in, they start to realize even a lot of these football clubs will be underwater by 2050. 25% of current like Premier League football clubs will be underwater by 2050. That's mad to me. And that still these people go around like nothing's going to happen. A lot of these events are sponsored by fossil fuel companies. The match I did, that stadium is sponsored by Saudi Arabian oil money. And so I felt like that's not talked about. It's not talked about that these sorts of sponsors are basically killing the future of the children in that stadium. And I feel like anybody else, they have a right to know that. And they have a right to make informed decisions about their future. And the only way they can make informed decisions is if some idiot makes such a scene, they have to look it up. Or somebody makes such a scene that it has to be talked about on the news.
Yeah, no, I agree with you a lot of things you're saying. Obviously, when you were like during the moment when you were zip tied, what kind of reaction were you getting from the fans around the stadium and even the stewards as well?
Oh, they absolutely hated me. I felt like the most hated man on the planet at that point. Like, I knew I was going to get a bad reaction. I waited for about half the match to do it, and in that crowd, I could feel the energy of these people. Really, really the mob mentality, watching the game and loving it. And I really felt one with those people while watching this game with them. I hadn't gone to many football matches in person before that, so I hadn't felt it properly like that for a while. And it was really, yeah, I felt really sad that I was going to have to do it because it was something that, everybody was getting so much enjoyment and happiness out of. And then I went and I did it anyway, because I kind of felt I had to. And yeah, the players looked really miffed. They didn't really understand or get it. They looked vaguely pissed off, but it didn't really come over or anything. The crowd was very, very hostile. They were all like shouting wanker and like throwing projectiles at me. And a couple of them tried to assault me. One guy got out of the crowd and booted me in the head before security dragged him off. Another half a dozen tried. One guy tried to get to me with a knife. Security held him back. As I was being carried off, there were dozens and dozens and dozens of projectiles thrown at me, glass bottles, whatever. The security protected me from them. When I was being removed, like the stewards and security were being very aggressive to me. They really did not make it, any effort to conceal the fact that they hated my fucking guts. Like one of them was pulling the thing on my neck tight enough so I couldn't breathe because they were thinking I might self-release or something. I wasn't able to, and I was making that clear to them. And I was like, guys, I can't breathe. Like, you need a medic here. And one guy was not dressed as a medic at all, said, I am a medic, you get what you deserve. And they continued to pull it and strangle me. That's the sort of reaction I got.
So you were almost villainized by like the fans and the stewards. But do you think they forget that what you're standing for is actually for them, the people? And obviously, you're protecting
Yeah,
the government. You're not
definitely.
protesting against the fans or the stewards. You're actually trying to raise awareness and wake everyone up, kind of. So it must have made you feel quite almost upset because they're not getting what you're protesting for. I read on like an articles that you see like a number of death threats. That must have been really hard and like really scary almost. I know most people would be really like it would shake a lot of people off, but does that kind of make you want to protest more and keep going, or did it kind of put you off a bit?
No, I mean, it was expected from the start. We take these actions out of love for the people on this planet and or the planet and all of the people on it, all of the lives on it. But we know not everybody's going to see it. From previous campaigning, it had been seen time and time again. I went to prison for Insulate Britain, and like I remember the comments on some of those interviews. It was terrible. Like half the country wanted me dead, and so I expected it here. I knew it doesn't really discourage me because I expect it beforehand. And so, yeah, when I got all these death threats, I basically just kind of turned my phone off for a week and ignored them. It didn't really matter that much. Like, it does mean I can never go to Newcastle again. Realistically, I don't think I can ever go to Newcastle. But I think I might be pretty safe in Liverpool now. It seems that, I mean, it's strange why these people were so against it. It makes sense because I feel it's a type of soft denial to admit that I'm not a complete arsehole for doing it. They have to admit the climate crisis is a threat to them personally. And that's a very scary thing to do. So a lot of people, it's easier to just ignore it and treat it as if it isn't a thing because, it makes them feel safe in themselves. But yeah, once it came out that the match was won for Everton in the overtime, that they gave more than they should have, that I bought, it changed a bit. Once that story broke a bit more, people started like really Everton fans were messaging me really happy about it.
Oh,
Like,
really?
Yeah, well, according to some of them, I'm the reason they're still in the league because they could have been relegated, but they won that match, which kept them um, in overtime that they shouldn't have got because they added too much that I bought them. They actually nominated, they're wanting to give me an award, Toffee of the Year, Everton Fan of the Year. So maybe I'll go to Everton and collect that at some point.
That's brilliant. I like that's not a story that's really been publicized. I think that's quite great and interesting as well. Obviously, before I started recording the interview, you touched on the fact that someone started protesting with you that was at the Everton Newcastle game. Could you like explain more about that?
Yeah, sure. So basically, yeah, so a few months after I did the football protest, we were just wrapping up phase one of the main Just Stop Oil campaign. So we've been going for weeks, targeting like, I think, a lot of my mates have been arrested 6 times in 2 weeks or something. I was close to that, but not as high because I had to do interviews. But we'd, yeah, been blocking oil terminals, like climbing up into the pipework, doing 40-hour occupations without anywhere to sleep, really. It was mad. And like spending like 35 hours on top of like oil tankers to stop them from moving, and a few other tactics like that. And we'd finished this 2 week bit, and the final action was we were going to sabotage a petrol station. And so yeah, basically we had a couple petrol stations around the M25 that we were going to sabotage because that would cause the press to actually have to talk about us, because we were quite annoyed that because all of the disruption we'd made was away from the general public at these oil terminals, the press had just ignored us because it was easier not to. So we wanted to do something they couldn't ignore. So targeting, yeah, the biggest service stations on the M25. There's 4 service stations on the M25. We picked the biggest 2. The one I was at was Cobham Junction, which is the biggest service station in the country. Now, one person on my team was this guy. I'm not going to mention his name, but I mean, you can make up a name for him if that makes it a better story. But like, he'd never done direct action before. He'd never been involved in any climate campaigning before. We were in the safe house the night before this action, and we were all going around after dinner talking. We were all saying, "Okay, why are you here? How did you get into this?" And everybody else is like, crying about their children's futures or talking about how it's the right thing to do, that sort of stuff. And we go to this guy and he's like, well, I've never done anything like this before. I was at this football match, yeah. And there was this absolute dickhead who fucked up the match, locked his neck to a goalpost and got carried out. And we were shouting, wanker, wanker. And then that night I went home and I looked it up, what it was about, and I thought about it and I joined. It was that simple. The guy had only joined because he saw the protest and he hated it at the time. But given a few hours to cool off, he was interested enough to look us up and then thought it was important enough that he wanted to join. And that it really touched me. Like, I cried a bit when he said it because it was like so, fulfilling. It was like it actually worked, because for so long I was questioning the effectiveness of it, and it just like that, it paid off.
So yeah, obviously getting a lot of stuff back from the fans, and then to hear that someone's actually, or
Yeah,
demonstration is just opened their eyes up to what's going on in the world, really. And yeah, that's been really like great to hear. Almost it keeps you going and stuff, doesn't it? So
yeah, definitely.
I'm going to go on to a bit more about like how you think football clubs could kind of reduce their carbon footprint and be more eco-friendly and stuff. So what kind of stuff would you suggest for clubs?
Yeah, I think this is I mean, there's a lot of things they could do, go zero waste, serve food with lower carbon footprint. But really, that's all bullshit. That's not the thing that's going to change it. There's a idea in a lot of people's heads that it's a personal problem, it's a carbon footprint problem. It's not. The vast majority of emissions are from a few really big industries. And the biggest thing we can do isn't personal change. It's not stopping driving or going vegan or stopping flying. I've done all of those things, but you don't have to. That's personal change. And it's not the important step, because each one of us in the grand scheme of things is very insignificant when it comes to carbon. Biggest thing you can do is get the policymakers to make change. So as these clubs, the best thing you can do is ask your people to actually act in civil resistance. You know, the best thing these clubs could do is demand the government do better when it comes to, you know, the laws around fossil fuels, um, and demands the government do better in terms of that sort of stuff. You know, any sort of reducing your own waste. It's more like patting yourself on the back, feeling like you're doing something without really doing enough. You know, the whole paper straws thing, it's all bullshit. It doesn't really do anything. Um, it's, I guess, if you really wanted to take steps, all of your food has and drinks has to be sourced locally and not flown in from other countries. But even then, it's just a drop in the ocean compared to the other industries. The biggest steps these people could make would be giving platforms to people like us. You know, let's say few minutes before and after each match, like they're doing at Glastonbury right now. On Glastonbury's main stage, they are giving Just Stop Oil 3 minutes between every single headliner. If, let's say, these football clubs did the same for us, this would be the biggest step they could take to actually securing a livable future for their kids. Because throughout history, the most effective model for getting change is civil resistance. It's what we're doing. You know, we're using the playbook written by everything through history that got this type of change. And it's not everybody doing their bit. It's everybody trying to find people willing to step up into civil resistance and like actually stand against unjust laws.
That's really interesting. I feel like a lot of the media kind of states that your organization are all like, oh, you can't have a TV, a lot of this like silly stuff, you can't do this, you can't do that. And that's not what you've said to me now. So you've just said it's more, obviously these things are important as well. We mustn't forget to recycle and stuff. But it's a lot about these big industries. And do you think this is done on purpose to kind of sway the people, the public away from organizations like Just Stop Oil?
Absolutely, precisely. And it comes back to the fact that 3/4 of our press in the UK is owned by 4 billionaires who've a lot of money in fossil fuels. You know, we're not getting unbiased news here. It's all tinted with the people own it want you to think it's your problem and not their problem. Um, it's like, yeah, even the recycling thing is basically a myth. Over 80% of the stuff that goes in a recycling bin never gets recycled. Over 80%. And like, we never hear about that. We don't hear about how, you know, even though we can all do our personal bits, the fact that these companies are still pumping this stuff out will never mitigate for us doing the best we can. You know, it's a sort of, yeah, it's strange. The media would have you believe a lot of things about the climate crisis because they have a vested interest in you not realizing the perpetrators behind it are the 1%, you know, the people on top, not the rest of us. You know, as someone in the 99%, the best thing you can do to fight the climate crisis is to do something about the 1% emissions, not your own.
That's really interesting. No, because I just think it's very, everything I see is very, when I saw an interview, I can't remember what show it was on. I was watching it yesterday, and they just seem to be trying to catch you out instead of actually listening to your point, like trying to like label you as a hypocrite almost. But I don't think that's what you guys are trying to prove there, really. Um, so if you had a message for a football fan and football fans in general on how they can be better and help this crisis, what would you suggest to them?
Yeah, I'd say the only really effective thing you can do in 2022, remembering that the top scientists say we have to stop fossil fuels now and the government aren't listening, is make the government listen to their own top scientists. Now, there's a lot of ways you could try to do that. You know, for decades, we've been writing petitions and emailing our MPs and nothing's happened. The only effective tactic that we've used so far is civil disobedience. Join us on the streets, you know, join a protest near you. On July 23rd, about a few thousand of us are going to go to London and sit down for 15 minutes. And that will be the first time that trade unions have ever taken large scale direct action. And I'd like all of you to join us for that. There'll be more events like this. If you check out Just Stop Oil website, that's where you're going to find places that you can really make the change.
I'll make sure to link that in the post and stuff. Well, that's everything. I've cleared everything up, Louis. Thanks for speaking to me. I'm just stop recording now.
Yeah, nice one, mate. Cheers.